Hello besties, my name is Mina. Welcome to my channel Mina Reads, and today we are going to be doing my wrap up for May. Yes, this video is egregiously late as all of my wrap ups tend to be, so thank you so much for tuning in. So let's get into the 11 books that I read in May. So first up we have Omega's Obsession by Sarah Bennett, and this is a part of, this is a part of her Heat Haven series, which is an Omegaverse novella series. This particular one is about a girl who is obsessed with her older brother's best friend named Dean, and so she is super duper obsessed with Dean. One day she finds out that Dean and his pack are looking for an Omega to share a heat with, and so she kind of puts her name in the ring and she inserts herself into Dean and his pack's love life, sex life through this organization called Heat Haven that helps Omegas through their heat. If you don't know anything about the Omegaverse, then that probably made no sense to you, but I am not going to sit here and explain the Omegaverse because it is a lot, so I recommend Google. But I gave this book like 2 stars because I don't really like the protagonist in this that much. She's just a little bit of like a wilting flower, and that's okay sometimes, but I just found her to be a little bit boring. Sometimes reading about damsels in distress is fun. In this case, it wasn't necessarily. I also feel like there was a lot of heavy plot in this one, and I just feel like the plot was very ridiculous and cartoonish, and really I was just there to read about all of the sexy fun times like in the first book in the series, Heat Haven. So I feel like there should have been more porn and less plot, and that's just me. Like this, I just was not a fan. It was kind of boring, so yeah, 2 stars. I will also say that I didn't enjoy the book because it is called Omega's Obsession, and it is very much about how the main character, I can't even remember her name, but how that main character is like really obsessed with Dean, the older brother's best friend, and I just felt like Dean was so fucking boring, and I didn't understand why she was obsessed with him, and so that also was like, it was a major driving, motivating factor of the plot and the story, and it just didn't make sense to me because Dean was like the most boring man on earth, just the most swagless individual you've ever read about, so it just was boring. I don't know, it was for me. So after reading that and having a bit of a sus experience with it, I decided that I wanted to kind of reset my reading, and so I went back to a series that I had already been enjoying, and that was Sign of Affection, which is a manga series by Sue Morishita, and it is so cute. I read volumes 3 to 5, and Sign of Affection is about this young girl, kind of young, she's in college, but this girl named Yuki, and she is a deaf individual, and so this is basically a story about how she's like building a friend group and a support system in this college that she attends, as well as how she meets this guy named Itsuyomi, and her and Itsuyomi embark on a romantic relationship with each other as she begins teaching him how to communicate in sign language, and it's really cute. So I read volumes 3 to 5 in that. Very good. I can't wait to read the next volume, but I'm not sure if it's like been published yet or not, like the English version, so waiting impatiently for my library to get a copy in, but I can't wait to read it. It's so good. Of like graphic novel, visual media, I'm going to tell you about this webtoon that I read, which is called Boyfriends, and it's so good. All you have to do is download the webtoon app and you can read it for free, but it is so cute. Okay, so Boyfriends is a webtoon that is about this group of 4 dudes. They're all in college and they all like each other, have crushes on each other, whatever, and so this is about them all developing relationships and starting a polyamorous relationship with each other. So this is about them like building and forming their polycule and like all of this stuff, all the negotiation, all of the wooing and the romance that goes into starting a new relationship. But they are just so cute, so sweet. It's very like domestic and fluffy, and there's not a whole bunch of angst, you know. It's very much like a easygoing wish fulfillment type thing. It's very pretty to look at. It's lots of pastel colors and it just looks really gentle and sweet and cute. It's definitely recommended if you are into webtoons, or if you're looking to get into webtoons, because it was a really quick read. I binged it in a single day after a recommendation from my friend Mariam, so shout out to her. I will leave Mariam's channel linked below, even though she never posts because she enjoys starving the audience, aka me. But yeah, this was a very solid recommendation from her, and I'm so glad that I read it. I just realized that I said I read 11 things, but that's like not quite true because I read 3 volumes of Sign of Affection. So technically I read 13 things, and I just counted them wrong because I like labeled it weirdly in my reading journal. So anyways, I actually read 13 things. My bad. Okay, so next up, I did a vlog. I do this annually where I read some of my most anticipated romance releases of a given year. And this year, those picks were Dating Dr. Dill, which I ended up DNFing. This is a Taming of the Shrew Shakespeare retelling with Daisy Rep, and I just really did not enjoy this one. I really wanted to love it. I wanted to love it so bad, but I honestly couldn't get past like the first 75 pages of this. So I don't want to necessarily give like a solid like objective review and say that this is bad or anything like that, but it was very much the kind of book that just didn't speak to me. I did not enjoy the author's sense of humor. I did not enjoy the setup for the romance. The characters pissed me off to no end, and they just made me want to fight. Like, I honestly wanted to fight the hero. I didn't really like the protagonist, Karina. Like, she was fine, but she wasn't like my favorite, not the kind of person that I necessarily want to follow for 300 plus pages. But the hero, whatever the fuck his name was, Prem, he irritated the shit out of me really, really bad. And it just was like, it just was a setup for a no good, very bad time. So I decided to DNF it. Then I read Book Lovers by Emily Henry. One of the most hyped, most anticipated romances probably on everybody's list this year, and I definitely think that Emily Henry is a deeply, deeply talented person, but I can't say that I was absolutely blown away by this story. Book Lovers is about this character named Nora. Nora has a complicated relationship with her younger sister Libby. Her and her younger sister Libby go on a vacation so that they can kind of reconnect with one another, and in so doing, Nora reconnects with kind of one of her workplace rivals named Charlie Lostra. And so this is a romance between her and Charlie, and also a navigation of Nora's relationship with her younger sister Libby. And I have to say that as a romance, I do feel like this book, I don't want to say that it fails, but I want to say that the romance in this narrative is very much not centralized. So I feel like to market this as a romance feels mildly disingenuous to me, and I definitely was disappointed with it because so much of the story is about Libby and Nora's relationship. And when I tell you that I didn't give not one single solitary fuck about Libby and about what Libby had going on, I really didn't care. Like, I think actually that it was quite well rendered, well written, all that stuff. So it's not bad on any objective level, but I just really did not care about Libby. I didn't care about what Libby was going through. I cared only the slightest, minutest amount possible about Nora's relationship with Libby and the emotional impacts of that. Like, all of that was all well and good, written well, conveyed well. It was very emotional, etc. I did not care because I was reading the book for the romance, and I feel like the romance between Nora and Charlie is just so understated in the narrative. It's too understated. I wanted it to be central focus, and it was definitely side plot to Nora's other emotional relationship with her sister. I still feel so robbed almost of all of the good Nora Charlie relationship stuff that we could have had if Emily Henry had pulled back just a little bit with all of the Libby stuff. You know what I'm saying? Then I read Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood. This book is coming out maybe in July, maybe in August, so it's not out yet. But this is about this character named Bee Conniswager. She is a neuroscientist, and this story is about her going to work for NASA, and she ends up working with one of her rivals from grad school. His name is Levi. It was another case where I wasn't a huge fan of the narration style in this one, particularly Bee and the way that she like processes all of her emotions through like allusions and metaphors about Marie Curie's life was so annoying. Like, what will Marie Curie do? Who gives a shit? Who cares? But yeah, so for me, I really struggled with this because Bee, outside of her Marie Curie obsession, her inner monologue was just so annoying, and she just did not feel like an emotionally intelligent person, and I just felt so vexed reading about her. And this story is very much like a miscommunication trope. The miscommunication trope pisses me off to no end. I do think that miscommunication is very much, you know, it is a staple in human interaction because communication is so important, but humans are also very bad at communicating. So I understand why the miscommunication trope is so prevalent and why it is realistic to have in a narrative, but I feel like the level of miscommunication that was happening in this book was just irritating and stupid, and I didn't love it. And I just felt like they just kept miscommunicating over and over again about dumb, easily fixable and communicatable things. I never really latched on to like the romantic or sexual connection between B and Levi. Like, they were just okay. Never really got fully invested in the romance. So I gave this one 2 stars. And the final book that I read for that video was Delilah Green Doesn't Care. And finally, we have a fucking winner. I gave this one 5 stars. So Delilah Green Doesn't Care is about Delilah, who is an artist and a photographer. And she's been enlisted by her stepsister Astrid to take the wedding photos for Astrid's upcoming wedding. And so she's going back to her hometown, reconnecting with her estranged stepsister Astrid, as well as some of Astrid's childhood friends. And this is about Delilah forming a relationship with one of Astrid's friends, Claire. I absolutely love this book so much. I love Delilah. I love her character. I feel like this book for me what struck a much better balance between that exploration of complicated familial dynamics and romance, because we get a lot about Delilah and her upbringing and her like social isolation, and the way that she feels kind of wronged by Astrid, the way that her and Astrid have this really tense and complicated relationship for a number of reasons. And I think that is so well balanced with the relationship that she has begun to form with Claire. Amazing. 10 out of 10. We love it. We stand. Highly recommend it if you're looking for a good sapphic read this Pride Month. So yeah, read this one. Definitely the best out of all the books that I read for that video. And yeah, but if you want any more detailed in the moment kind of thoughts, you can definitely check that video out. It'll be linked in the description and maybe in the cards up above. So yeah. So then we have Roomies by Christina Lauren. This was on my spring TBR, so I'm glad I ended up getting around to it, but I didn't love it. So I would give this book maybe like a 1.5 star out of 5. So let's talk about Roomies. Roomies is about this character named Holland, and Holland is very much a nepotism baby, kind of sorta. And so she is living in New York, living in this splendid Manhattan apartment, kind of on her famous uncle's dime. Her uncle, he runs like a very popular Broadway production, and he has gotten her a job, so she works like on his Broadway production. But yeah, so she's kind of living this nepotism baby lifestyle, living the best of New York, etc, etc. And she, every time she goes on the subway, she sees this subway performer named Calvin, and she is completely obsessed with him. So she has been kind of keeping tabs on him for over a year. She has his schedule like kind of memorized. She always goes to see him every day, even if she has to go out of her way to go see him, and all this kind of stuff that to me makes her behavior a little bit more obsessive than just like a mild crush or a slight admiration of an artist that you enjoy, you know, and that you see occasionally coincidentally. Like very intentional behaviors and interactions on her part to kind of see him and monitor him and keep tabs on him, which is a little bit didn't love that, right? It will So basically, one day a spot opens up in her uncle's Broadway production where they need a new guitarist. So she says that, oh my god, you guys should hire this guy. I know, he's a subway, he's amazing, you have to listen to him play. So he goes and they are like, okay, we want to give you this job, you're amazing, you're brilliant, we want to hire you. But he is an illegal immigrant, like his visa has expired or something like that. So Holland basically offers to marry him so that he can, you know, get his papers, etc., and work on this production. And so this is about them becoming like married roommates. Eventually in the narrative, this is kind of a spoiler, but eventually he does find out that she has known about him for like over a year, and she kind of has been watching him and keeping tabs on him. And we even find out that she had like recorded him at a few different moments and had been like taking pictures of him and stuff. And so he expresses some discomfort with that, as he should. I mean, who wouldn't feel kind of odd knowing that someone who has a lot of control over his life at this point, like she's the whole reason that he has a job and a place to live, and like she could get him in trouble with immigration if she wanted, and like all this kind of stuff where she has enmeshed herself in his life to a really extreme degree, and knowing that she had been like keeping tabs on him, and so maybe she had planned this, you know, maybe she entrapped him. Like these are kind of this is the vibe that he gives off when he kind of questions her, like, were you stalking me? And she then, you know, reacts incredibly poorly to this idea that she could have been stalking him. And she's like, how dare you accuse me of stalking you and being some kind of creep? So then he has to kind of grovel and apologize to her and make her feel better about her stalkerish behavior. And I absolutely hate that to such an intense degree, because I feel that while, yes, it's like, the way that the narrative kind of portrays it, it does feel like it's a bit of a more complicated situation than her stalking him actively. But I do think that male characters should be allowed to have emotions, and I think that male characters should be allowed to express discomfort if they feel like a boundary has been crossed. And I definitely think that it is easy to see and to say that she has crossed a boundary by keeping tabs on him, taking pictures of him, being really invested in him, like emotionally and parasocially prior to them getting to know each other. And then she enmeshes herself so deeply in his life by marrying him, and she gets him this job, and like he owes so much to her. And so I think that anybody could feel, you know, uncomfortable and unsafe discovering those kind of things about this person who is now a huge integral legal part of your life. So I think that he has every right in the world to feel, you know, questionable about that, to have questions, to express discomfort. And I feel like he should have been validated in that, even if the narrative, you know, kind of like explains it away and eventually he's okay with it, like, sure. But the fact that he is made to have to apologize to her for experiencing his emotions and for experiencing his discomfort, I think that's bullshit. Like, I think that's bullshit. Not to sit here and like be a men's rights activist or anything, but men also have boundaries. Men can also be uncomfortable with things, and he should have been afforded the space in the narrative to feel those feelings, and she should have apologized to him and explained herself to him, rather than him having to apologize to her and placate her for how her actions made him feel. That's weird as shit, and I don't like it. So 1.5 star, maybe just 1 star. I don't know. I didn't enjoy it. I'm sorry. Yeah. So then on a more positive note, I started this series, which is called the Saint of Steel series, and it is about this group of paladins who they are the kind of like holy warriors for this god called the Saint of Steel. And the Saint of Steel, he imbues his warriors with berserker-like powers. So essentially what happens prior to the events of the narrative is that the Saint of Steel has kind of mysteriously died and severed his connection to his paladins. And so a lot of the paladins' numbers have been greatly diminished, and we are following a select few who are still kind of carrying on in the aftermath of the death of their god. So each book is kind of like a fantasy romance where there's some plot elements going on, but there's also a romantic relationship being formed between one of the paladins and some other character. So the first book is Paladin's Grace, and this one is about a paladin named Steven. He meets this perfumer named Grace, and this is about them forming a relationship while also trying to solve this crime that's going on, because there is a visiting dignitary and there's been multiple assassination attempts on his life, and so they're trying to figure out like what's going on with that whole situation, and Grace becomes implicated in the crime. So this is about them dealing with all of that stuff in addition to them forming a relationship. This one was cute. I really like the world in this. I like the humor. I like the characters. I wasn't like 110% invested in the relationship between Grace and Steven, but it was cute, so I gave this one like 3 stars. So then I read the second book, and the second book is called Paladin's Strength, and this is about another paladin called Istvan. And Istvan, he is on a journey to investigate some stuff that has come to light in the first book in the series. So there's kind of like this mysterious serial killer on the loose, and Istvan and a few other people are out investigating that. And while they're out in the wilderness investigating that, they come upon this nun named Clara, and so Clara joins their party of travelers while they're trying to figure out what's going on with this serial killer. And Clara has her own agenda. She is trying to be reunited with the rest of the members of her convent because they have recently been stolen. Clara is a bear shifter. She can shift into a bear basically, and her and the rest of her sisters at the convent, they have that same ability, and so they have been kidnapped and they're kind of being trafficked for their shifter abilities. So this is a story about that. Like, they're hunting down her missing sisters, they're trying to figure out what's going on with this serial killer, and it's also a relationship between Clara and Istvan. I really love this book so much. I think that the pacing of this one was a little bit better than Paladin's Grace. I love both of the main characters so much. I really like their relationship, their banter. It's all very good, very fun. They have a very sexy energy about them, even though their sex scenes that they do have are not like too descriptive, but like they have a really sexy energy. I love them. Very much a power couple. They 8. So I gave this one 4 stars. Really good. And then the final book that is out in the series, I do think there's going to be more, but the final book that's out in the series is called Paladin's Hope, and this one was definitely my favorite. And so Paladin's Hope is about another paladin named Galen. Galen is basically helping this police officer who is kind of like a badger, like a talking badger. He is helping this talking badger do his police work, and they're investigating a death of like a mysterious death. There are some bodies that have been washing up on the river. They're all kind of mysteriously chopped up, and they don't really understand how these people are dying or where they're coming from. They get this person who works at the morgue to do like a crime scene investigation, forensic science stuff for them basically, and this guy's name is Piper, and Piper ends up helping them with the rest of the investigation. And this story kind of has like a horror vibe to it. It really gave me like a very strong Saw vibe. Like if you've seen the Saw movies, you know what I mean. There's kind of like this dangerous traps situation going on, and it kind of has that energy, and it's really interesting and exciting and like anxiety inducing, and I had so much fun reading it. But I love the talking like animal companion police officer character. I can't remember what his name is right now because it's been so long since I read it, but he was the cutest character imaginable, and I love talking animals in fantasy books, so 10 out of 10 would recommend if you are a talking animal person in fantasy. But the relationship in this between Piper and Galen is so cute. They're so funny together and ridiculous. But I think that more so than caring that much about their relationship, although their relationship is fun and incredible and I love them and they're both so unhinged, I think that my favorite part was definitely the investigation that they had going on. Like it was actually really interesting, and I love like the horror vibe of it. It was just so fun, and I absolutely adored that. That one 5 stars, best out of the series for me. It was incredible. I really want like a physical copy so I can annotate it and like highlight it and all that good stuff because it was just so good. I loved it so much. And the final book that I read in May was Saint by Sierra Simone, and this one was also 5 stars, and I honestly am so shook to my core about this rating because I have read multiple Sierra Simones in the past, and I kind of like Sierra Simone's writing style, but I definitely think that she is prone to some odd writing decisions. And even in reading Priest, the first book in this the Bell Brothers series, I don't know if that's actually what it's called, but like it's a series about all of these brothers, the Bell brothers, falling in love with people. And in Priest, I loved Father Bell, but I did not like Father Bell's love interest, and I didn't like her side of the narrative was annoying, and I just didn't like the way that the story progressed, and I didn't enjoy their romance to any degree, but I did like the writing, and I did like Father Bell as a protagonist. So I kind of wanted to give the series another shot, and I ended up listening to the audiobook for Saint, and it was so fucking incredible, you guys. So Saint is about Aiden Bell, and basically Aiden, he goes through this mental crisis, and he turns to faith to kind of help him through this mental breakdown that he has, and he ends up becoming a monk. And so this is about him as a monk, and he's trying to really like devote his life to God, but he feels like he cannot fully give up like his more worldly and secular life because he is still so deeply in love with this man named Elijah, who he was dating prior to him taking his solemn vows to be a monk. So this is a story about faith and about mental health and about love and like passion and connection, and it is so deeply beautifully written, and I love Aiden so much. One of my favorite characters that I've read about this year. I love the way that mental health is discussed in this book. I am not Catholic, so I'm not going to talk about if like the representation of that is any good, but I just felt like it was such an interesting examination of faith and the things that faith can do for a person mentally and emotionally and spiritually, and I just loved it so much. And I really did enjoy the relationship between Elijah and Aiden a whole lot, but I wouldn't say that like my favorite aspect of the story is necessarily the love that they have, although the love they have is really good, and there are lots of like really beautiful love quotes in this. I think my favorite element of the story was most certainly Aiden himself and his emotional journey, and just finding out like about the way that he experiences and conceptualizes his own faith and his own like journey and relationship with the Lord. All that was really interesting to me. So I just had a really great time reading that. Like it was just fantastic for me. So I gave it 5 stars again, and yeah, it's just so good. Mwah. So yeah, that is all of the books that I ended up reading in May. Thank you so much for sticking around and watching this video, and hopefully I will see you in my next one. So bye guys, like, comment, and subscribe, and a special thank you to all of my wonderful patrons.